Hello everyone, thank you for joining us in this edition of The Inside, live from our headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. I am Babla Jonathan. Today we are analyzing the wave of coups sweeping across West Africa, with Niger being the latest case. And today, the 7-day ultimatum given by West African leaders to the juntas who seized power last week to reinstate democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum ends. And what is going to happen next? Will the West African leaders engage in military action against the junta in Niger? Will the ultimatum be prolonged? Will a transitional government be put in place? What is going to happen next, and the consequences of what could happen not only in Niger but across West Africa, because we have the support of Burkina Faso, Mali, and even Guinea to the junta in Niger. And we're going to be analyzing this and looking at possible happenings in that country and other West African neighbors in this edition of The Inside. Meet our guest in some few seconds. Our first guest tonight is joining us from New York, United States of America. Barrister ANENEBA Innocent AKUFOR is an attorney and counselor at law, major proponent of decolonization. Barrister, you're welcome to the program.
Always a pleasure, Mr. Babila. And again, the pleasure is always mine coming on your platform, Equinoxe, a very respectable platform back in the Cameroon. And so again, hopefully we have to get a very enjoyable program tonight. Thank you so much.
And our second guest will be joining us from Pretoria, South Africa. Barrister Liboros Oshoma is a Lagos-based legal practitioner, public and African affairs and policy analyst. Is going to be joining us in this edition of The Inside in a short while. I begin with this report on updates on the situation in Niger. I said earlier that the 7-day ultimatum given by leaders of the West Africa regional bloc, ECOWAS, to the military junta that seized power in Niger last week to reinstate democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum ends today, and the West African leaders threatened military action should the junta fail to reinstate President Mohamed Bazoum. That ultimatum ends today. Now let's get updates on the situation in Niger with Fomi Armstrong-Sanda in this report.
Led by former Nigerian head of state Abdul Salam Abubakar, the delegation was initially scheduled to present the demands of the Economic Community of West African States ECOWAS leaders to Niger's school leaders. Unfortunately, the dignitaries left Niamey without having met the head of the junta, General Chani Abdurrahman, and the overthrown President Mohamed Bazoum. Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the bloc's chairperson, urged representatives to do whatever it takes to ensure a conclusive and an amicable resolution of the situation in Niger. On Thursday evening, the putschists announced they would retaliate immediately in the events of aggressions or attempted aggressions against their country by ECOWAS. Thus far, the mandates of the American, French, Nigerian and Togolese ambassadors have been ended, as school leaders announced it was scrapping military pacts made between Niamey and Paris. Amid Niger's Independence Day festivities, Thursday, many young persons gathered to demonstrate in favor of the military coup against democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum with Russian flags and anti-French slogans. These demonstrations coincided with a speech from coup leader General Abdurrahman Tiani, who decried the threats of interference by the Economic Community of West African States ECOWAS and possibly Western powers. The harnessing of anti-West, or more particularly anti-French sentiment, has become a key component of the narrative conveyed by coup leaders, though it is highly probable that Abdurrahman Tiani and his fellow military men moved against President Mohamed Bazoum for self-serving reasons. President Bazoum had announced a reshuffle of the Presidential Guard, removing the general as head of the Presidential Guard. Nevertheless, These events have shed a light on a wider discontent and underlying tension, among which is the lingering sense of hostility towards France. Many attribute this hostility to France's colonial record in the West African country and the rest of French colonial Africa, though the main issue is highly economical.
And as you heard there in that report by Fomi Armstrong Sander, the recent coup in Niger has shed light on the resistance against colonialism in some West African nations, including Burkina Faso, Mali, and even Guinea. And of course, we're going to be analyzing all this. Barrister ANENEBA Innocent AKUFOR, what's your analysis of the current situation? What's been happening in Niger?
Yes, Mr. Babile, as your lead person just said a while ago, this is at the backdrop of a poor economic conditions back in West Africa, especially in the Sahel region. Anti-colonialism or neo-colonialism policies of fervent back in these areas of our continent. That's what's driving this stuff. And of course, unfettered capitalist adventures in these regions is exactly what's fueling the crisis in this region. Especially in Niger, you have to understand that this is a country of about 25 million people. The mean education level of these people, according to the Human Development Index by the United Nations, it's only 2 years. Niger is, the life expectancy is about 60 years. 80% of Niger lies within the Sahara Desert, and it is one of the poorest nations in the world, ranking again in the HDI, 189 out of 190, just below Chad and South Sudan. But again, why is it that there is so much interest of the West in this particular area? What is the main reason? You have to understand, in 2019, the US built the biggest drone bases in the world in Agadez in Niger, and the United States has about 1,000 troops in Niger. Of course, the French has 1,500. This is the former colony of the French people. But you see, but the issue now is all this investment in military and security assistance in these areas. What is the common man? What is the common denominator here? What is the common man actually getting from all this military assistance? Because United States spent about, that air base is called 201 in Agadez. It spent about $110 million building that, and almost $20 million every year maintaining that base in Niger. But what are the institutions that America has built? What are the institutions that the French have built in Niger, besides the exploitation of their natural resources and uranium? This leaves the average person in this society, so distraught. And the only thing they can see is they welcome some of these military coups. It is not something that Africa should be yearning for, because we've seen this. And unfortunately, this is something Niger they've had, about 7 attempted coups, and 4 of them have been successful. Of course, the recent one that's been successful. And this is, again, at the backdrop of neocolonialism. The policies that they follow in Africa, it has failed. It has failed woefully, and especially the French, their interest in this, especially in the Sahel. Because if you look at Niger, a very rich country in uranium, 3 out of 4 light bulbs in France have been powered by Niger resources. But we realize that after this putsch, this coup d'etat by the military junta, Nigeria, which is also a struggling country in Africa, had to impose rolling blackouts just to punish the Nigerian economy. But this is a country that's not supposed to suffer, considering the amount of resources that they have. We're looking at a place where people have the resources, but they keep suffering, and that's the tinder for some of these coup d'etats back in that particular region.
Right. Now, what explains that it is at this point in time that this ill-French feeling, this anti-French sentiment is being expressed in these countries where there have been coups of recent, and this is coming at a time when the wave of coups seem to be like contaminating the different from one country to the other. Now we have Niger. We don't know which nation is going to come up first. What explains this expression, this outburst of anti-French sentiments in these countries?
So the root of this wave lie in regional instability, poor governance by elected leaders, and many successful past coups d'etats again in the past, because they see this as a sort of a panacea to find a solution to the current problems that they have. But until the West, the partners to this country, they build institutions are not structured that make it power for them or that guarantee the resources for them, they would always have this purchase do exactly what they do, because they've gotten that pension that the only way to exercise your authority and power is by the power of the gun.
Right, and when we look at what's happening currently in Niger, there are images that are suggesting quite a number of things with regards to relations between Niger and other nations, and notably we have the flag of France that is burnt, destroyed, and then we have the flag of Russia that is being raised. What can we read within the lines of that?
So, if that question is still directed to me, I think it's a sentiment that has been brewing since independence in these countries. You have to understand that the first coup d'etat, especially in was staged by the French people in 1963 against one of our African countries right down there when Olympia was toppled. And this successive coup d'etats, when you introduce another system of government called democracy, and the people try to adhere to it, follow its principles and precepts, and you go around again, you cut through these democratic processes and install puppet leaders who answer to your parliament and your senate and your House of Representatives, then the people become a little bit perturbed because of that. So that's the favor that's been brewing. That's the underswell that's been happening in these countries in the past years. Unfortunately, you cannot replace one pilfer with another pilfer. You cannot replace the French with the Russian, thinking that that's a solution to your problems, especially if you're picking the military alternative. Because what's the price tag that these people come in order to guarantee your safety and your security? The price tag is your resources again, and you turn around realizing that they're doing exactly the same thing that the other new colonialists did. So, I mean, this is a coup d'etat, but the thing is, if it turns into a revolution, where the masses really rise up against not just the military institution, but the entire institutions of power inside their countries, to find a solution, a long-lasting solution. I think that's where we're going. Because the military, they will never provide you a real solution, because they only bring in more armor into your countries, and in the end, you become more of a dictatorship than a real life democracy. So, flying the flag of the Russians and, accepting Prigozhin and Wagner in your territories, I don't think that is a solution. It might be a temporary fix because you have no other way to tend to, because your new colonial masters, they've failed you and failed you woefully. But again, in the end, you still come back again to the same square box. Where do we draw? Where do we draw the line between these people that have really imposed their will on us for so long a time, and we just don't find a way to get out? So we build our institutions, we build people that are able to withstand the shocks of the West, and change your educational system. That is what is going to get you into the next generation. Don't accept everything that they say from the West that is true, because it is not everything from the West that it is true, because they look at their interests first and never your interests first. If you get that in mind, then you will find a better solution to your problems in our continent.
Fingers are all pointing towards France and other Western nations. But what about the other fingers that are pointing to internal factors? Not only the case of Niger, but even the other African nations that are not experiencing these political political problems, but are experiencing all the aspects of other coups, like constitutional coups, institutional coups, and all whatnot, which all contribute to deprive the people of their right, to deprive the people of food, to deprive the people of electricity, to deprive the people of good roads, pipe-borne water, and all the social needs. What about all that?
Yes, we can never always lay a hand just on the West. We look at our own people, because these are our societies. These are our institutions. This is what we build for posterity. You know, in the book, The Land We Leave Behind, I put inside there that those people who pick those guns and fight along the streets, they die thinking that they're fighting for somebody that they know, and they just don't know. They're either fighting for multilateral corporations that have imposed their will on your constitutions, imposed their wills on your Senate, imposed their wills on your leaders. These are the things that we have to find a way to take back power from these people, because as long as you leave it in their hands, they will always guarantee your resources and your future to the West. This is a military coup d'etat that happened in Niger. But you also have constitutional coup d'etats. You have balloting coup d'etats. You have soft coup d'etats in which people at the top, they decide to manipulate the laws, manipulate the constitution with the help of the military in order to assist them to propagate and arrogate the authorities of their people, put it into their hands, and exactly what they want without fear or favor, because they know that they'll be backed by their Western partners and their Western masters. So if you point your finger just to the West, no. We have to look at our own consciences, look at our institutions. We can pick any country in Africa and it will be a perfect example of why we are failing. If you look at neo-colonial institutions, especially in the French African countries, those neo-colonial institutions, that's a tinder for a future disaster. Because if you're building career people whose sole responsibility is to guarantee the country for foreign partners and resources, then the country is not going nowhere. And that's why you see young children with secondary school, high school, university education, they cannot fit within that society because the educational system that is pushed onto them is not something that can sustain them for tomorrow. They find themselves out there dying in the Mediterranean, dying in the Sahara, and going to work in the same factories that your resources go to prop in the West. And some of them are being discriminated, and eventually some of them again might even be deported back to come back and face the furnace to get back in your home countries. So again, we cannot really blame everything on the West. We have to find a way to take down leaders by a constitutional process that we can guarantee people will look after the interests of our people and not the interests of the West. Again, as I said, they always look at their interests first, because within their legislatures, they have people that work just to study your constitutions, study the way you operate, and find way to send their contractors or their multilateral corporations to write contracts which find a waiver or something within your constitution. They can bypass it, or they impose their will on you. This is what you must do in order to guarantee that we work with you. But again, if you're strong and if you're powerful as a people, strengthen your educational system, then you will have at some point be able to negotiate with these people and bargain for them, not at a comparative disadvantage, but at the advantage of the people of our own societies, our societies back in Cameroon or in Africa as a whole, because we've been left back for so long. It's something that we have to look into and find a way and find a solution for tomorrow for our children.
Dr. Christopher Fomunyo, Senior Associate for African Regional Director of the National Democratic Institute for International Affairs, said the correct response to the socio-political economic problems that African nations are facing today is not the gun, but rather more democracy. Now, among the protesters on the streets of Niamey, on the streets of different parts of the Niger Republic, are other nationals, including Cameroonians. We have reports of Cameroonians and other nationals who are joining the citizens of Niger Republic to protest against the Western nations, including France, and to support the military junta. What do we understand in this support coming from other nationals, Africans from other countries, supporting the military and standing against France and the other Western nations that are said to be involved in the exploitation of these countries, African countries?
Well, again, if Dr. Fominio is saying that Africa needs more democracy, I mean, he is speaking from the position of somebody who's worked with some of these institutions back here in the West, worked in Cameroon, and he knows exactly what would they need to move forward. But if you have people take democracy and turn it into something that becomes a dictatorship, then that is just not more democracy. If you have a society where they take basic principles of representative government and turn it into advanced democracy, which is a pseudo dictatorship, then that is not democracy. The more of such would only bring us more misery. The fact that, you know, these children back in Niamey or in other purchase countries, they stand up to wave the flag of an oppressor or a foreign country in that particular country, decrying the problems of the French. In particular, we always cite the French, especially in our part of the Africa, the Sahel, out of West Africa, because they've done such a poor job as a colonial master and a neo-colonialist up till today. So, you know, standing in solidarity with these people, it is something that we have to take into recognition. When ECOWAS president Omar Touare gives them 7 days or to return power back to Mr. Bazoum, to Mr. Mohamed Bazoum, I think it is something you're trying to put the cart before the horse. You have to look at the underlying causes of these issues and address them. Bazoum was a very, very effective person, but not for his people, because he was a very corrupt leader at some point. If you look at it, after this putsch, after this military coup d'etat, the one thing that the United States has not called it, it's a coup d'etat. We call it in Africa. ECOWAS jumps the gun and say, okay, they're going to send a military force in Niger. You know, President Tinubu, who is currently the chairperson of ECOWAS, is saying, okay, we would send a military force back into Niger to see if we can reinstate Mr. Bazoum. But America has not called it a coup d'etat. They've not. The president of the United States, President Biden, on Thursday, all he said was, you should give a safe passage to the former leader and protect his family. But he never called it a coup d'etat, because once you label it a coup d'etat, especially from the West, it means that there are lots of resources that will no longer flow from America into Niger. And they need Niger as a strategic partner against ISIL, against, of course, the Chinese in Africa and other European countries competing in Niger. So these young people waving these flags, you have to understand it that, you know, they're doing it out of a point of desperation. But this has to be a fervent revolution that comes from the base, not from the military. Because if this revolution comes from the people, then it would usher something that would be institutionalized, change institutions, and change power structures that might be answerable to the people and not to a select few people.
Right, Barrister ANENEBA Innocent AKUFOR. I want us to go to the newsstands now, and we're going to take a look at what the newspapers reported this week in Cameroon. After that, we'll talk about, we are talking about the management of this coup, the management of this problem in Niger by ECOWAS under the leadership of Nigerian President Bola Tinubu. Immaculate Fogwe with the press review.
The Sun, The Post, and Advocate newspapers focus on the laying to rest of the emblematic SDF chairman Nijon Frundi in his Babatu residence in the northwest region of Cameroon. According to the papers, the population was able to conquer fear so as to pay their final respect to the late chairman. As reported by the Horizon, Northwest population thanks separatist fighters for permitting the burial of the chairman. The Chronicle Times rather contradicts the Horizon, as it says the population of the Northwest region shamed separatists by giving the chairman a befitting burial. The Garden Post exclaims, SDF G27 members boycott Nijon Frundi's burial. According to municipal updates, Northwest and Southwest Reconstruction, Islamic Development Bank gives fresh impetus. The Horizon takes interest in the 20 Cameroonian groups who have taken their destiny in their hands. They convened Southern Cameroon's People's Conference in Canada. On the front page of Municipal Update, publishers in the Northwest and Southwest region affected by the ongoing iPhone crisis beg on President Paul Biya to create a special fund for them. Another issue of the Garden Post reports, Russia-Africa Summit, President Paul Biya's spectacular outing and subtle message for 2025 presidential elections. Eden tells its readers that after emerging Interpol's champions, ISOSA CEO Karl Mokake dedicates success to Southwest region.
Thank you, Immaculate Fogwe, for the press review. Barrister ANENEBA Innocent for the 7-day ultimatum given by ECOWAS leaders to the junta that seized power in Niger Republic last week ends today. First of all, what do you think about this approach of the ECOWAS leaders with the use of force to try to restore constitutional order, to try to restore democratic rule in Niger? What do you think about the approach of the ECOWAS leaders? They are negotiating also, but negotiations seem not to be producing any tangible result. Now, the use of military force, the threat of military action, what do you think about that?
Yes, in every situation, Mr. Babila, I think the military option should be a last resort. I mean, that's not something we need to put our people through. Another military, construct back in the Sahel, and of course, the other putschists in neighboring Niger, they basically said it. If you decide to bring a military solution to this particular problem, we would side with Niger. And woe betide you what happens again to the other countries, because you have to understand Niger is surrounded by 7 different countries. The consequences of a military action, it will be untold, because refugees will be, fleeing Niger and going to all these other countries, and they might cause, instability in their own institutions, because they're all not very affluent countries in this particular place. So the idea of ECOWAS threatening military solution, which was supposed to happen today, I think it was a little bit, as I said, Mr. Omar Touare putting the cart before the horse. I think you go into negotiations rather than putting all these threats. ECOWAS, it's a mouthpiece of the West. They are being sponsored by the West, and we know exactly where their favor is. So it is, that they will be threatening military action. It is something that it's an anomaly. And I think they should try to negotiate a peaceful transition, maybe give these people, these putschists, a time period where they can restore democratic rule back in Niger. Because as I said, the President of the United States did not call it a coup d'etat. So this is something they say it's ongoing. It is ongoing. So it's something that we might negotiate. They might negotiate their way out of it. But that Mr. Mohamed Bazoum might be the president again, I don't think that is true, because they've turned him a very corrupt leader, anti-Nigerian people and pro-West. And this is exactly what, this is the fervent undertone of what actually precipitated this presidential guard, to take over, seize power from him in order to restore institutions, not to restore another military leader again back in that place. Because if ECOWAS decides to go with the force, I mean, they've done that in Liberia in 1999, they've done that in Sierra Leone, they've done that in Guinea-Bissau, in Ivory Coast with the French, of course, and in Mali in 2013, and in Gambia in 2017. The one in Gambia, they might be taking that as a reason they should intervene in Niger, is because, you know, Yahya Jammeh just decided to leave power rather than let his people go under the, you know, the spell of bloodshed. So it is not something that we should be dreaming that we should go into a war inside this region, because it is not just Niger will be fighting. Burkina Faso has said they will join forces. Mali said they will join forces. There's 7 other countries in the Sahel region, Sudan, all these places, they are already unstable. You don't want to go again and take another military action. There are ways that we can bring a solution to this problem. And of course, try to find a democratic process that is attainable and suitable to the people. Build the institution, because there is no reason why a country like Niger would be, I think that's the 7th or the 8th richest uranium producing country in the world. They power 3 out of 4 French light bulbs in France, and they should not be in poverty. And since when they got their independence till today, they are poor, and they have these people, they live out of opulence from them. So there is no reason why you should come and increase the misery of these people again with another war, a war because you're fighting it to support your paymasters and these multinational corporations that wreak havoc on your constitutions, you know, to let your people die because of that. Because when this war starts, where would the ammunition be coming from? Probably coming from the French, the United States, Russia. We don't produce arms in Africa, to the best of my knowledge, but not in Niger. So why would these people die? And these people are in their comfort zones, in their foreign capitals, you know, deliberating to see how much you have slaughtered your people, you know, just to come back again and gain the spoils again and install another puppet leader. So to the ECOWAS president and the whole, the president, the acting chairperson, President Bola Tinubu, please, this is not the reason for you to go to war against Niger. Try a diplomatic solution. Say these people, these are your people. These are your people. Don't take instructions from the West, please, because the more you take instruction from them, you will never find a lasting solution that benefits the people.
Now, the 7-day ultimatum ends today, and latest information is streaming into our newsroom from Niger indicate that there is anxiety among the population, and they don't actually know, and they're worried about the uncertainty looming over the country, as they don't know what is going to happen next in the few hours ahead. When that ultimatum expires, will military action follow next? Will there be a prolongation, or will the ultimatum be prolonged? What is going to happen? What are the possibilities as far as the situation in Niger is concerned? What is going to happen after that ultimatum of 7 days given to the junta to reinstate democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum expires tonight?
Well, again, if the coup has not, the anti-coup favor from ECOWAS and its partners, if it hasn't taken place, it might still take place again, because today is Sunday. Sunday is not yet over in my part of the world, and most likely in our part of Africa also. Sunday is still there. They might still come with that military force, but I bet you, as I just said in my previous remark, it is not something that we need. We don't need war. We've seen the consequences of war in other parts of Africa. Look at South Sudan, it's part of the Sahel. Look at what they're going through. They're going through, the best ammo is in South Sudan. These people don't produce it. And that's exactly what will happen again if you bring this ammunition again in Niger, that you're going to fight. You're going to basically be pitting 2 different ideas now, because Wagner, we don't know if Wagner is in Niger already, but we know they are in neighboring countries. You know, if this is another new Cold War that we're trying to foment and Africa will be the playground, then I think ECOWAS should look deep into their consciences and see that this is not where you want to keep your children for tomorrow. Because we suffered the fate of the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. That came to pass. There was a new strength that was canvassing all over the globe, which was democracy. But if we've gotten to a point where these democratic institutions or principles, they're not assisting our people, we'll find a way within our own solutions, not the solutions from the West, because all they want is stability within a particular region. It doesn't matter what the cost of that stability is. If it is for them to put one person there and he stays there as a dynasty, that is stability for them in order to reap your resources. So if ECOWAS thinks deep and they see that this is not something that they should be thinking of, even dreaming, they should not impose a military option. It should come as a last resort, but not as a precursor of a war that's already been hatched by people not within Nigeria, not within Gambia, not within Niger or Burkina Faso, but by people outside of Africa. Because believe it or not, this institution has sponsored you and they want a payback. And this is where we don't have to go. You see, our biggest problems, Mr. Babile, we've spoken about this long time ago, that where multilateral corporations, you call it inverted democracy, or, democracy incorporated, where big institutions, multinational, heavy institutions come into your country, they bypass your laws, they bypass local laws, and implant themselves in your country, and you find there is just no way. They come there just to reap. You find no way for your people to subsist out of what God has given them. But your leaders, because they've been paid by these people, they pander to the West, and that's where they stay until, your people go on the streets and they start marching, get a revolution to get this going. The military coup, it is not a solution, because a coup d'etat is just a change of guard at the top, which you have the military, the police, the gendarme in the case of Niger. But again, these coup d'etats lead to what might become a revolution, which is a groundswell of the entire population getting up. And that's why you're seeing these people. If ECOWAS is coming, imagine everyone in Niger that we've seen after this coup d'etat, they are supporting the putschist, which is not that's a very dangerous road we are going down. That's not a good path for Africa, that we support military dictatorships. But if the entire population is standing up to stand for this military junta, then believe it or not, then ECOWAS is going to slaughter everybody in Niger, including Mali and Burkina Faso, because they've said they're going to rise up to the occasion to fight for their country, because these people that have been placed there, they have been placed there to milk and pilfer and do everything to assist the West get a stronghold in perpetuity in your country. So again, ECOWAS should not take a military solution as the only solution. There are diplomatic ways.
But let's look at the best way out of this situation now. But before that, let's take some interviews. And after interviews of the week, we'll take a look at the best way out of this situation. What should be done now? Interviews of the week.
I think that Niger itself is already enough force, because before a military junta takes up power, and of course, mind you, Abdurrahman Chani was the presidential security chief, and this man was even indicted in 2015 for planning a coup, which was not even with Bazoum. You should understand. And immediately there are some countries in the Sahel and around in the West Africa who are already sympathizing with him. I just fear that ECOWAS shouldn't rather cause much more a storm in a teacup than what is already happening. But I believe, and I believe strongly, that this is a dog that is only barking, and there is nothing they can shoot forth for. What has ECOWAS ever done in preventing wars? We have West Africa that has a country of coup d'etats. We have Burkina Faso, we have Mali. So many of these countries are there. Is it only the case of Niger that is particular? You already see Burkina Faso that is weighing in to assist Niger. We have already seen even other countries that are coming in. So I think that it should be that is just a threat, and to me, that is an empty threat. I think it's just to threat. And before long, you will see that the military junta in Niger will start attending the ECOWAS meeting. They are going to engulf him because they are all birds of a feather. So those are all empty threats. according to my analysis.
The government should do something faster. Some of us, we are getting older. We are parents and we have children that are looking up to us. For somebody like me, I've been in the center, I have children that are going to school, even though there is a school in the center, but they will reach the secondary level. I cannot keep on depending on the government. I need to be independent. I need to work for my family. Where I have families out there that they are looking back to me in the society, I need to work for my future. And whereas the future of my children, I cannot continue sitting here and waiting on the government to come and sponsor my children. At least I am a parent. I need to show them the maturity that I give back to them. The government should do something to help us so that we can at least be mature enough. When we sit here, they give us money, they clothe us, they feed us, and our own children. They need to do something so that we can take up our responsibilities, so that we should not also be like a burden to the government.
The machines are there, the equipment is there to train in all the domains, to train these young people in all the domains. And not only that, when you are in the DDRO, you already benefit from the blanket amnesty the head of state gave to the ex-fighters. If any of them wants to continue their education, we give them the opportunity to continue their education.
It's very difficult for us here because we will not be able to even be able to say with the condition, our living condition here. The place that they are calling that they are giving us magazine is very expensive. To even have 1,000 francs in a day is difficult. Suffering very much because we are here. There's no place like a magazine where we can keep our things there. We are here to sell food and there are too much mosquitoes. The environment is not even clean. The mothers here are really suffering because when there is rain, there's no way to even cover the things and keep the things in. When there is sun, they don't even have any shelter that can cover them. So we are suffering seriously. We are paying ticket in this market from Monday to Saturday. Every day we are paying ticket. Even Sundays we are paying ticket, which is not. I think that is not good. Even the day that we call that is a labor day, we also pay ticket in the market.
Thank you for staying with us. Barrister ANENEBA Innocent AKUFOR, what should ECOWAS leader, ECOWAS chairman, Nigerian President Bola Tinubu and his peers do now to solve the problem in Niger Republic?
They should not declare a war on Niger. It is premature because the people, the stakeholders in Niger, they've not even called it a coup d'etat. So why would you be rushing to kill your people for absolutely no good reason? You see, so we should try to, ECOWAS should try to foster institutions within these countries. Look at the root cause. If they're saying Mohamed Bazoum was a very corrupt leader, go into these root causes to see whether he was a corrupt leader indeed, and try to find solutions. We should not be, again, as Dr. Fomio said, we should introduce more democracy in our societies in order to find a way to, to get a panacea out of this particular problem. So in the West, for example, in the United States, democracy itself, it's a work in progress. They tell you every day, it is their institution that they're working every day to perfect it because it is not perfect. So if it comes within your societies, our societies back in Africa, we should just not accept everything that's imposed on us. Try to work it within your own realities and see how you can find institutions that manage your own specifics within your countries without devolving or going back to the West to import their model into our societies. That's where we fail, and that's where we always come short because you think you've elected democratically acceptable people into power. But in the end, you realize that there is an undertone that was behind it that you don't know. But again, to answer the question short, ECOWAS, please do not impose war on Niger because it is a perfect tinderbox there in the Sahel region. South Sudan is already there, and Sudan, they're embroiled in a serious war, a civil war right there. If you come to Niger, Burkina Faso joins, Mali joins, all other countries around that particular place that are surrounded by the certain countries, they would feel the effects. Nigeria itself has a very long border with Niger. They will feel the effect. There will be a flow of refugees. The fact that you go inside, let's say you take the military people, they will dig down, they will dig deep, and they will be able to withstand the shocks of all this. Even if you kill them, there will be another military coup again coming up. So you don't always try to make these conditions favorable for them to always come to power, to cut down democratically elected leaders. Make it possible so that, they don't even attempt the throes of power. Because if you do it that way, another military coup is going to come back again, because if you force Bazoum back onto them, believe it or not, another military coup is going to come back again in Niger in 1 or 2 years after that leader is reinstalled. So
all right,
I think they should work with these people.
Before you go, you're a Cameroonian and you're based in the United States of America. What should be done to solve the problems in the northwest and southwest regions of the country? Because in Niger, we have problems back here at home, the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions. Very quickly, what should be done now by President Paul Biya and other government leaders?
They're coming with their corporations to help you to deal all this stuff. Because if you look at the, again, yes.
Yes, all right, thank you, Barrister. Thank you, Barrister ANENEBA Innocent AKUFOR. We are caught up by time, and this is where we're ending this edition of The Inside. I've been Babylon Jonathan. Thank you for staying with us. Coming up, the bilingual 8 p.m. newscast. Stay with us.